Artlist.io.
Okay, welcome everyone to another edition of My True Crime Obsession. And joining me on tonight's episode of My True Crime Obsession is attorney John Ray. For anyone that may not be familiar with this name or with this person, John Ray is the attorney that represents the estate of Gilgo Beach murder victim Shannan Gilbert. And I want to thank you, John, for joining me tonight as a guest on my podcast.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to thank you, first of all, for all the work that you've done on behalf of Shannan and her family. You've definitely been so instrumental in keeping Shannan's case in the media, keeping the police on their toes, keeping her memory alive, and definitely continuing to pursue justice on her behalf. Certainly, if it wasn't for you and for Mary Gilbert, Shannan's mother, certainly we wouldn't be where we are today with regards to this case. Of course, it does still remain unsolved, but we've certainly come a long way since, Shannan first went missing and her remains were found. So,
Thank you.
So, just taking a look at this, just kind of give the audience just a little bit background about Shannan and her case and just some details about, her disappearance and her murder, if you'd like.
Oh, you want me to do that?
Yeah, if you don't mind, sure.
Well, Shannan was a 23-year-old young woman who found herself in sex work, and she was supposed to have serviced a John, which is a person who seeks, to pay for sex, out in Oak Beach in Suffolk County on the water near Ocean Parkway. And that was on the morning of May 1st, 2010. She apparently was driven there by a driver named Michael Pack, who was a convicted human trafficking person who did time in federal prison for that, and who worked for sex agencies, which are the fancy, nice term for sex trafficking organizations and people.
Yes.
And so she went there, and the short version is, for reasons that are right now in dispute, she ran away, knocked on doors, and finally disappeared. And her belongings were found in a place in the marsh behind the Oak Beach community, between Oak Beach community and the Ocean Parkway to the north. And then her body was found about a quarter of a mile to a third of a mile away in the marsh. A year and a half later, her bones were recovered. And she's been controversial because the police began looking for her and ended up discovering 10 other bodies along Ocean Parkway, or parts of bodies anyway, in some cases. And it's created this controversy ever since. And now we have the arrest of Rex Heuermann for at least 3 of those murders, and is apparently about to be charged with the 4th one.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that kind of brings us up to date.
Yeah. Maureen Braidner Barnes. Yeah. So, yeah, it's been, 13 years since she disappeared from Oak Beach. It's been 12 years since her remains were found. I mean, so much has transpired in that time, obviously, with the arrest of Rex Heuermann in July. And then, obviously, you recently had given a press conference, I believe on October 11th, that you had 4 witnesses come forward who had given police affidavits, correct? With regards to...
Excuse me. There's been several witnesses who've come forward since Heuermann's arrest, come forward to me. And two of them gave affidavits at the point when I gave the press conference in conjunction with Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison, and two of them, excuse me, two of them were verbal people who came forward with verbal statements but did not sign affidavits.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, others have come forward as well with affidavits and the like. So the scope of the investigation evidence is beginning to expand more quickly, and we have concomitantly. I've kept myself running fast and furiously to keep up with what's coming in here all
Mm-hmm.
the time.
Yes, yes, thank you. So yeah, taking a look at this, I mean, I listened to your press conference. It was very enlightening. A lot of information came out. But one of the things that struck me, I've been following this case very closely, as many fellow Long Islanders have. And the last place that Shannon was seen was obviously in Oak Beach. Now you have Rex Heuermann coming forward as a witness, as a possible suspect in the Gilgo Beach murders of Amberlynn Costello, Megan Waterman, Melissa Bartholomew, and obviously it looks like he's going to be charged with Maureen Brainerd Barnes' murder sometime in the near future. But I know there's been a lot of talk. There's been a lot of speculation about Dr. Peter Hackett as a possible suspect in Shannan Gilbert's death. He may have had a direct or indirect role in her disappearance and death. And I just wanted to get your take on this. Like, how does that correlate now with I know that you had somebody come forward giving an affidavit, a taxi driver. And she had given information about possibly seeing, Rex Heuermann with Shannan Gilbert at the Sable Motor Inn. So I'm just curious to know, like how does Dr. Peter Hackett fit into all that? Is there any connections at all between Dr. Peter Hackett and Rex Heuermann?
Well, we look for connections
Mm-hmm.
like you've just described
Mm-hmm.
in the beginning after, I say in the beginning, I mean when Heuermann was arrested. And initially, of course, not easy to do, not easy to find. We didn't find any. So that takes you in a direction that we were going, which is that Peter Hackett was responsible. And and that continues. We sued Peter Hackett, and that suit proceeds.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, and after the witness connects Shannan Gilbert with Heuermann in the Sayville Motor Lodge several months before Shannan disappears. Since then, of course, we'd want to look a little more intensely for any connection between Heuermann and Hackett and Shannon's disappearance on that morning. So we've looked, and interestingly, there are potential connections, and we need to explore them further. But Peter Hackett ran a business known as Survivalist Dynamic, and he had another man who worked with him in that business by Hackett's own testimony. And in his diary, he mentions it. When Heuermann is arrested and police inventory is done of the things that the police took from his home, one of the items or group of items taken were something that they called survivalist materials. So that's a specific thing. I mean, if you take a gun, you take a shirt, you take some piece of furniture, I don't know. They're not necessarily survivalist items. So survivalist items have to have a more particular description that makes them discrete from other things. And I don't know what they are yet.
Mm-hmm.
But here we have a man who's involved in survivalist movement, that's Heuermann, and a man who runs a business in that movement, and that's Hackett. In that arcane, very hybrid, small community of people who are survivalists in comparison to the whole population on Long Island, in today's world of computers and cell phones and the like, there's a high likelihood that people who are in that community, so to speak, of interest get to know one another, contact one another, communicate with one another, engage with one another. Uh, Keep in mind that Rex Heuermann was a joiner. If you look at his record, he joined organizations. He was very gregarious. He enjoyed being in the group situation. Um, and a joiner is somebody who will join other groups as well. Besides maybe the immediate group he's involved in. And we know he joined architectural groups, and he was on the internet looking at really filthy, really sick child pornography, as well as apparently snuff type films, according to the district attorney. So that would usually, those kinds of people tend to find others like themselves on the internet and the dark web, and they hook up, they connect, they get to know each other, they sometimes meet each other, they exchange pictures, they exchange stories, they rate the children that are in the pictures and so forth. It's pretty sick stuff.
Yeah.
So he's inclined to be, you know, it, he being Heuermann in that kind of a group. So he's a joiner, and would therefore be a joiner in a survivalist context. The answer is very likely. So
Yes.
now we have to look further at that. But there is that connection. Um, it's kind of an interesting connection. I'm just curious about whether he had any connection with he being Heuermann with Hackett's cohort in the business of survivalist dynamic, because the cohort was a graduate of the Merchant Marine Academy, apparently was a cruise ship captain, and um, it turns out that Heuermann's secretary went on a trip on a cruise ship and told told Heuermann, when he told her that he was not um, that he no, I mean to say it otherwise. Sorry. The secretary told Heuermann that she would be out in the ocean and he could not possibly, you know, contact her or find her. And he said to her, "Oh yes, he could, and he would be able to prove that to her." 2 days after she was out in the ocean on the boat, an envelope was slipped under her door with Heuermann's handwriting saying words to the effect of, "See, I can find you anywhere I want." Words to that effect.
Wow.
So
Okay.
um, that you can see that Heuermann is a dedicated stalker. He's also a hunter. And the survivalist movement, they like to train in woods and in marshes and such uh, for the day they think is going to come, the new Holocaust. And they're like Boy Scouts times three. And as we see, all these bodies are disposed of in woods and in the swamps, in marshes here on Long Island. So we're looking at that whole
Yeah.
connection. Keep in mind
Yeah.
also, when Shannon first speaks uh, on the audio tape of the 911 phone call she makes desperately, her first words were, "Someone is after me." She repeats that 3 times. Not "they are after me," someone. And then it certainly can't have been Brewer, because Brewer was in the house with her right there when that call was made, according to Brewer's own testimony. Can't have been her driver, Pack, because she knew Pack. So she wouldn't have called him someone. It's someone else who was after her. And that someone else is later on, we see that Shannon talks about, "They are trying to kill me," on the tape. Several
Yes.
times she says that. So I get from that there's a group, there's somebody chasing her, and there's also a group. And does that connect Heuermann? Not necessarily at all. Does it exclude Hackett? Nope.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I recently had a chance to speak with Suffolk County Police Department, and I had attended CrimeCon, and there was a presentation on Shannan's death, and unfortunately, the person that was presenting, had said that her death was natural causes. I had also met with
Who
Dr.
was
Mike.
presenting?
I unfortunately, it was a deputy sheriff. I have to get his name, but he was presenting with Kristen Thorne from Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Okay.
Yeah, and they were just going over the case. And, CrimeCon is a national convention. You get people from all different, areas of the United States. And so not everyone is familiar with the case as those of us living here on Long Island. So I had kind of challenged him at the end during the question and answer period, saying that I see that, Suffolk County is still, using the narrative that, Shannan's death was due to natural causes. I said, yeah, Dr. Michael Baden actually happened to be at CrimeCon. I had a chance to speak with him, and, he had confirmed, I know that he had done an autopsy through you on Shannan's remains. And, I said, can you explain about the hyoid bone? And they didn't really have an answer for that. And could you go into a little detail about that, about Dr. Michael Baden and what he had discovered through his autopsy results?
Sure. Uh, well, first, you should note, I don't know who this deputy sheriff was, but the sheriff's office was never involved, to my knowledge, in any active investigation of Shannan's death. So he's got to be speaking from second and third hand materials. But whether it's the sheriff or the district attorney's office or the police themselves, it doesn't matter. The fact is that the homicide detectives are the ones who have urged the theory that Shannan died of natural causes. Their chief of detectives on May 13th of last year, 2022, held a press conference exclusively for the press, no one else allowed in, wherein he took a shortened version, a very, very shortened version of the 911 tape, played it, and left out enormous amounts of important information, and also showed slides that accompanied the presentation. And some of those slides were outright deliberate distortions, physical distortions of what they were showing, all to come to the conclusion that he made that Shannan died probably, which is their favorite fudge word, probably of a tragic accident. Now, you just have to start with this. These are homicide detectives. Their lives are devoted.
Oh, did he time out?
Are completely concentrated on evidence. They have to be, because they're making an arrest for homicide. When they make an arrest, if they don't have enough good evidence to make it stick, that murderer walks. And they know it. Sure that their evidence is solid. They devote themselves to that. They know evidence like nobody else's business. So how could it be that in Shannan's case, they draw a conclusion that she probably died of a tragic accident without knowing what the accident was and saying they don't know, and without any other evidence, not a scintilla of evidence that Shannan Gilbert died of a natural cause? It's completely, that conclusion, that is completely antithetical to everything homicide people do. So why would they do that? You have to really ponder deeply on that point. Why in God's name would they make such a conclusion without a scintilla of evidence? And weighed against that, all the evidence that she was murdered that piles up, including Dr. Baden's report. And so on that report, Dr. Baden and I, we came to meet. I had known him when he was a medical examiner, I think for about 2 years for Suffolk County. And then he went on to New York, doing New York City. And then he was a world-renowned, is a world-renowned medical examiner. And I had asked him to get involved in the case, and I went to see him, and it turned out we had something very much in common, and that was his brother Bobby. And Bobby would work with Michael on his autopsies, and he was his assistant. And Bobby and I had played semi-professional football against one another many years ago when I played for the Long Island Giants. So we had a good bond. We hit it off, and he agreed to help pro bono
Nice.
uh, on the case. And we did the autopsy together, along with a very lovely reporter from, at that time, Fox, Christina Corbin,
Mm-hmm.
and Bobby. And we looked at the hyoid bone, as you would, and Michael immediately noticed that the horns on the hyoid bone, which is kind of a U-shaped bone with a base and two horns, and then a horn that would stick out off each horn. So there was a horn on a horn. Those horns were missing, and the large horns were broken. They were rough and broken.
Yes.
That's a sign of a fracture of the neck, because the hyoid bone sits here in your neck,
Mm-hmm.
and it floats by itself. It's the only bone in your body that is not attached to any other bone.
Yeah, and it's very difficult to break that bone through any other means than through strangulation, correct?
Yes, it is very difficult to break that bone. It's not impossible.
Okay.
In a sporting accident, for example, it's possible for that
Mm-hmm.
bone to be fractured, but extremely hard for that to occur.
Yes.
And
Yes.
the studies done of women who were strangulated or hung, even hanging in a legal hanging back in the day, they were virtually all, I mean, up over 90 some odd percent
Yeah.
of them had their hyoid bones fractured.
Yes.
So that's a historical study, goes back a ways.
Yeah.
Anyway, we could see that the hyoid bone had been fractured, and we could also see that at the base of the bone, right through the middle, was a circular hole that went all the way through the bone. Michael did not have an opinion as to how that happened, and it was not germane to his finding, so it's not mentioned in his finding because it's not needed. But it's more than a curiosity why there would be a hole there, and I cannot find a doctor who can explain it and say it was a result of a natural cause.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting, maybe a sidebar on this, but nonetheless, there it is.
Sure.
So, could it be a sign of torture? Perhaps, I don't know. There we have it. So Dr. Bodden comes out and he says, and he reports that her death is consistent with homicide, and it is not consistent with natural cause.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, what do the police make of that once they have that?
Yeah.
And then to say, well, but still, even though we have no evidence, she probably died of a natural cause. It's just, it flies in the face of their own work, and it flies in the face of their experience,
Mm-hmm.
and it flies in the face of common sense, and it flies in the face of science.
Mm-hmm.
So, where are we with this?
I know. Well, I mean, talking about, obviously you had an old regime working there. You had obviously people in power under, her when her investigation was, taking place. Thankfully, we have new people in place. I mean, I've been very complimentary of Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison, Suffolk County Police District Attorney Ray Tierney. I think they're doing a fabulous job. But, it's a shame when you look back at the old people who were in charge of this case. And those that are familiar with this case, obviously, you can't talk about it without talking about James Burke. And some of the older police officers, Richard Dormer, that was, working on the case. So I'm glad to see that, finally there's, a new task force in place and that they're really making a lot of progress. But the person I did speak with was actually Anthony Carter, who was a Suffolk County Deputy Commissioner. So he did a nice presentation at CrimeCon, and he presented Shannan's case. But, unfortunately, they stuck with the dialogue that, that her death was, still by natural causes. So they wouldn't really budge on that. But
Well, I wasn't there. I don't know
yes,
what Mr.
yeah,
Carter did. He seemed like, from what you're saying, he sounds like a gentleman. And my guess is that what you're saying in so many words is that when he made a good presentation, what he did is he made a pleasant and gentlemanly presentation. But how can anybody call that a good presentation? I don't have to be there to know that you can't make a good presentation when you don't have any evidence. They fly in the face of one another. They're contradictory.
yes, yes. So we have a question. We have Roger Still is asking about Hackett and Pack. I know that you had done another deposition with on Joseph Brewer. Are you planning to do another deposition with regards to Dr. Peter Hackett or Michael Pack?
I've conducted already two depositions of Michael Pack. One years ago when I first entered the litigation, and I also conducted an interview of him before that. And I recently conducted a second deposition of him in the late springtime of this year at here in Suffolk County in Riverhead. Dr. Peter Hackett has been deposed three times by me, all back a while ago. And the reason for the new depositions of both Pack and Brewer was because I had gotten the 911 tapes. I had disgorged them from the police department by legal force, in that we had to fight them in court
Yes.
in a bitter litigation that lasted for 2.5 years, two lawsuits and two appeals. We won them, and I got the 911 tapes delivered, but I couldn't use them until I had permission to do so. And I got that permission when Rodney Harrison graciously came to my office in February of a year ago and said that he was going to release the entire tapes. So then I had permission to go forward and use them. Because of that, I could then conduct new depositions of Pack and Brewer. But I could not conduct a deposition of Hackett. He's a party to the case without special permission from the court for some other purpose. And, Hackett's insisting he wasn't there. So, short of being able to say to him, here you are speaking on the tape, that's you, which I can't do. I have no reason to be able to depose him again.
Sure. Sure.
I tried, but the court
Okay.
said
Yeah.
I tried.
Yeah. And I thank you for all the work you've done in acquiring the police tapes. I know that was definitely a lot of work on your part to get that done. How long approximately was it that it took, as far as how long it took from the time the cops had the police tapes until you were able to acquire them?
Well, from the time I came into the case, they had them. That was in December of 2011. The police had them before that, of course, but from that point on, I didn't receive the tapes till 2016, and I didn't. The police did not give me the original tape. They were supposed to.
Yes.
They
Yeah.
represented to the court that they would not give me the original tape, that they were going to continue to hold it because it was an open, ongoing, active investigation, they claimed. And they lost that point when they delivered the tape to me. It was not the original. It was a copy of a copy. They never had the original. They misled the court under oath in saying that effectively they had it and wouldn't give it up. They never had it. It was in the hands of the state police.
Okay. Does that tape still exist, the original tape? Does the state
I
police
don't
still
think so.
have?
I don't believe so.
No.
I subpoenaed early on. I subpoenaed the tape from the state police as well, just in case. And their response was, "We're not giving you anything. It's all up to the police department. We're going to do whatever they tell us to do."
Okay.
And when we went back to them to ask if they had the original, they said no.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, let's take a look at where we are now. I mean, taking a look at this, obviously, Rex Heuermann is a suspect. Do you want to share any of your thoughts on, how you think it's all going to play out? Or, how you feel he may be tied to Shannan?
Well, he may be tied to Shannan uh, because of the testimony that we've acquired of a taxi driver
Mm-hmm.
who saw them together at the Sayville Motor Lodge several months before Shannan disappeared. Um, in that sense, they're tied together. There may be other ways to tie them together as well. Um, we're looking, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know where that's going to take us. The field is open, but you can be sure there are more witnesses who know more than we know, and hopefully they come to us.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Um, so let's take a look. Yeah. Sorry. So at this point, you had four witnesses that came forward when you did the press conference on October 11th. Can you talk a little bit about Karen Vagada and what happened with her? Supposedly, what had happened with her in regards to the woman and the couple that had gone to Rex Heuermann's house. I guess it was around February 14th, 1996, correct?
Yes, it's around then.
So, with regards to that, can you go a little bit into detail as to what transpired?
Sure. The witness who was a swapper, uh, not a sex worker, uh, she claims that, and she does so under oath, with her name not disclosed at this point, and um, with my agreement that I won't disclose her name
Sure.
identification. She says that there was a swapping arrangement that between her and her boyfriend, who was a detective from the New York City Police Department, um, and they were they were swappers. They would celebrate the things like Halloween and St. Valentine's Day and so forth uh, by going to to swapping engagements. Those engagements would take place at a place called La Trapeze, which was over on 27th Street, anyway, uh, and in New York City. Uh, and that was a place that was specifically made for swapping. And you had to become a club member if you wanted to swap. And you had to bring always had to come in couples. And you had to leave with the same person you came with, or they wouldn't let you out. They'd keep you there locked up. So it was a very, at the time it was being done, it was, I guess, experimental, maybe chi-chi. I have no idea how it's viewed, but, this is the days of Studio 54.
Mm-hmm.
And, and so they had this club there, and um, it was frequented, according to several witnesses I've spoken to. It was frequented by police officers, and quite a few people were from Long Island who would go there. Now, your partner didn't have to be your spouse. It could be, but you could bring somebody else. And oftentimes, the one person that wanted to go in would go and hire a sex worker, bring her, and they would then have a partnership. So much so that I think there was a hotel nearby, right next door, actually, where several sex workers lived, and they would frequently go to Le Trapeze. So that's the way it was there. And th- I have confirmatory other witnesses who've uh, confirmed what was going on there and the way it was going on in the particulars. And this witness that signed the affidavit has described that, and her description appears to be very accurate. She claims that in or about Valentine's Day of 1996, in celebration of Valentine's Day, she and her partner were going to go to a swapping party Uh, she thought that her partner obtained the party information from a posting that was at Le Trapeze, but that's not all perfectly clear. That's her memory um, of it, and uh, it was to be held in Massapequa Park at Rex Heuermann's house. Heuermann's house. So they went there, but they brought with them a young lady who had been acquired by the detective driver, and the witness didn't know exactly how that occurred. But she described the young lady as being bent over and leaning always to the side as they drove, and she was in the back seat, and that this was an awkward posture. And we also know, separate from her knowledge, excuse me, separate from her knowledge, we know that uh, Karen Vergata had recently, at that time, been in a car accident that had disfigured her uh, or had injured her spine. So there's consistency and there's some corroboration of the story. So they go, the three of them, to Massapequa Park, and apparently her boyfriend disappears with Heuermann, and she knows that she says that men who do the swapping, they tend more and more to get involved in sex with the other men as well as with the women partners, and that was just an inclination that she had noticed at the club as well. uh, so her boyfriend disappears with Heuermann, and she's a little concerned because she's waiting and waiting. They don't come back. The girl has also disappeared, and the the witness offers sex with the wife who was there, Mrs. Ellerup, and the wife declines to have sex. So I, the witness believes it's because the witness is an African American, and she thinks, well, maybe this girl didn't want to sleep with an African American.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't know, but that was her guess.
Okay.
Um, that issue becomes more interesting because uh, you look for reasons for everything, and that could have been one reason. But Robert Macedonio is a lawyer um, who is the lawyer in the divorce uh, of Ellerup from Heuermann, and he is Miss Ellerup's lawyer. And in rebutting the witness that I had met and had qualified to give the affidavit, and who the detectives from Suffolk County had met with at great length with me as well, Macedonio goes on television and says, this couldn't have happened. Mr. Ray's making all of this up because uh, Mrs. Ellerup could never have had sex at that time because she was pregnant. Well, it turns out she was pregnant
Mm-hmm.
at that time. And we all know that pregnant women can still have sex, but we also all know that that several women don't like that. They don't want that, and maybe where there may be a health issue involved, they don't want to endanger the child.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so, in a situation like this where there's swapping, you can understand that. And so, what he just did is he explained a logically good reason why Ellerup declined sex. So it's completely consistent with the statement that the witness gave as to what happened.
Yeah.
But it also does something else. It tends to establish, I don't say it's automatic, but it tends to establish the reason why a third party is brought along in the car,
Yes.
because she becomes the substitute partner for the wife who in advance they knew was not going to have sex.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, and uh, it was not an extraordinary thing for a police officer in La Trapeze to find sex workers as partners and go there. So all these things tend to, you could see where the puzzle, the
Yeah.
pieces
Starting to
fit.
fit. Yes.
Maybe not as tightly as you want them, but tight
Yeah.
enough. Um, and so you have that element in there. So
Yeah.
I thank Mr. Macedonio for his great lawyer work on our behalf. Maybe he should think about a different career. Uh, he's considering how he's
Yeah.
representing, his clients and revealing their secrets all at once.
Yeah, I mean, I look at that and I had a couple of questions. I mean, first, I'm thinking to myself, and I'm sure many people are thinking this, like by his admitting that, he's also actually admitting that, Asa was involved in this, like in the sense of swapping. So if she was involved in swapping, she knew of her husband's deviant sexual behavior. Just exactly how much did she know? And then you have to question, well, if she knew about that, what else did she know? Did she know that her husband was not only into deviant sexual behavior, but, all the websites he visited, and possibly did she know that, he could have been a murderer? You have to question that. Did she know about that? Was she aware that, that he was meeting up with prostitutes and that these prostitutes were winding up dead? You have to look at that. So,
Well, you do, and we have another witness who is not given a sworn statement, but nonetheless confirmed that she would service Heuermann and in his home, and the wife was perfectly aware of all of that.
yeah.
And of course, think about it: if this guy is the serial user of sex workers to service him in his home, which even the witnesses of Suffolk County Sheriff that
Mm-hmm.
he's found seem to confirm, um, for 27 years in that tiny little home, it strains any reasonable mind to think, well, she didn't know about it, or if she did, she didn't
Yeah.
approve of it, and she was, very abused and so forth. There's not a scintilla of evidence that she was abused in any
Mm-hmm.
way whatsoever, that she would tolerate such a thing. So how do you explain the operation of the mind of this guy? And if we look at the perversion that he's into, the swapping, the switching from one sex to another
Mm-hmm.
in his own to satisfy his own pleasures, and he's he and his payment for sex for 27 years. All right, and sometimes, according to one witness, uh, where he's paying for more than one woman at a time. Uh, his complete devotion to sick, really bad child pornography, where the children are being not just sexually abused, but they're also being physically abused. In his devotion to violence against women in the sex tapes, doesn't it? And now we're believing the district attorney that that he's
Yeah.
also devoted to killing them and chopping them up, possibly.
Yeah.
She didn't notice that for 27
Yeah.
years.
Exactly.
Sorry, a little hard to swallow.
Yeah, I agree. And then, obviously if he's swinging both ways, then, you look at the Asian male, Fire Island Asian male that's unidentified. I mean, that he could be now tied to that possibly. So,
Yeah,
we do have a
it's
question from Elizabeth
fascinating.
Kirk. It says, was anyone able to question the detective who brought Vergara to Rex's house, Karen Vergara? Because obviously, my understanding is that they left her there, and that she was. It appeared to me from what I read in the affidavit that she, the police officer that attended, said, "Oh, she's playing a sex game with Rex Heuermann," but it seemed like she was, a little upset to be left at the house, or at least according to the girlfriend. The girlfriend said we should bring her back with us. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Sure. I don't know what's happened with the detective. It's not my purview.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's up to the police department and perhaps the task force. And I don't get a day-to-day report about what they're doing, so I couldn't answer that question.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but the witness says that when they were leaving, she and her partner were leaving Rex's house, Heuermann's house, she saw the other woman, in the window, and the woman seemed very upset, and so that caused her to say to her partner, who had gone back to get his belt. Um, he thought he had lost it, but he didn't. Actually, it turned out. She said to her partner words to the effect that, why are we leaving her? What's going on? And he said, "Oh, don't worry. They're just playing a game. Everything's fine." And with that, the woman appears outside the house naked. And this is we're talking in February at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And she's running in front of the garage. And you can see the garage in the picture of the house.
Mm-hmm.
She again asks her boyfriend, what are we doing? Can't we, what's going on? Why aren't we taking her with us? And he said, "Oh, don't worry, they're safe. It's a game they're playing, and that's all that's going on." And she was very disturbed by it, but they left, and that was it. So, uh, I, what she tells us sounds credible. I mean, one can question it, of course,
Mm-hmm.
but it all has had the ring of credibility to me, and I believe also to the police detectives. But in any event, one of the interesting facts is that she claimed uh, that they came in a certain car. That was the detective's car, but they left in a different vehicle from the house. So that would suggest, if that turns out to be true, that Heuermann and this man, the partner, knew each other before this. That there was more of a connection there. I don't know.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to understand this. So this woman comes with her boyfriend and Karen Vergara to the house. They come in one car, but they all leave in a different car. So did they leave the car that they had there, or I'm not quite understanding that.
Yeah, that's the point, is that they
Okay.
came with one car and they left with another car, but they only
Okay.
left together without Vergata. And the only reason she really gets upset and finally does something about it is because years later she's watching TV and sees this girl's face
Yeah.
and says, "That's the girl."
Yeah.
She breaks down. She has an
Yeah.
emotional complete breakdown that she abandoned that girl there that night, and then calls me.
So can there be any legal repercussions with this police officer leaving her at the house? And obviously, she was never seen again. So, I mean, obviously, you know, I guess that's going to be a question for Suffolk County Police to answer. If he knowingly left her at that house and left her in harm's way.
Yeah, it's sure there could be legal repercussions of various kinds, but criminal and civil. Uh, However, establishing the bases for those repercussions is quite a different issue, and that's not easy to do. Even with the facts as I've just explained them from the witness, there's more work to be done to make sure that kind of testimony can stick. So, and very often in cases where there's oral testimony, um, which is, I mean, all testimony is oral eventually, right? Uh, there needs to be sometimes something that affixes the testimony to other facts, which we call corroboration. And there has to be that. So
Okay.
that's not so easy to do very often. And people sometimes who have good, truthful things to say are nonetheless legally discarded um, in what they have to say, because there's no way that what they say can be used in a court of law.
Something else I wanted to touch upon is when you took these affidavits, did you take them? You took them, I'm assuming, in your law office. Was Rodney Harrison present at the time when those affidavits were taken?
No, I did not take them in my law office.
Okay,
I
I
visited.
apologize.
It's quite all right. I take the time and put the time in to, it's not easy work to meet up with these people in the places where they were, which is not close by, and meet them. I first interviewed them by phone, Then I interviewed them personally, face to face, and then interviewed them once again, and they signed the affidavit, and then or affidavits, and then uh, met again as to the swapper with two homicide detectives in another place, not here, uh, to corroborate with them, or at least to allow them to test her veracity, her credibility.
Yeah.
And as to the taxi driver, Rodney Harrison himself and I met with her. I rented a space for the meeting in New York City, and we met with her. She had come from another place as well, so that he could personally test her credibility and corroboration. That's how it happened.
Yeah, yeah, and the taxi driver is interesting because she really has no real stake in this at all. I mean, she was doing this, from my understanding, as a moonlighting job. She had a job as a banker during the day, and she came forward, I guess, through seeing pictures. Is that my understanding? Well, over the years, I guess she came forward with information that she had, just trying to help the police out, and so my understanding is that she had received a phone call from a woman at the Sable Motor Inn, asking her to, honk the horn when she got there. And this woman was panicked, and she believes that the woman looked like Shannan Gilbert, correct?
Not exactly,
Okay.
but close.
Okay. Do
Close.
you want to? Do you mind
Okay.
just going into a little detail? Because I want to make sure we get the details right, because obviously it matters.
Yeah, sure. Keep in mind that the swapper as well as the taxi driver, neither one of them have
Sure.
skin in the game. They don't have reasons to ulterior ones to give a statement. Any discernible ones anyway. They're not looking to have their names exposed. They're not looking for fame. They're not looking for book rights. They're not looking for a movie. They're not looking to be publicized. They've asked that their names be stricken, and we did that. Um, so there's no uh, discernible reason that they would come forward with falsehoods, especially when they commit themselves to an affidavit where they're swearing under the penalties of perjury, and knowing that that document would be given to the police and would be relied upon to tell the truth. And for them not to do that under all these circumstances would be quite a bizarre thing to do. So, in some respects, that's a corroboration in its own right of the veracity of what they say. But as to the um, taxi driver, she gets a call from the dispatcher for her company. That's how that happens. And the
Okay.
dispatcher tells her to go to this room, flash the lights, and beep the horn, and the girl will come out. So that's how it actually occurred. And that makes sense, of course. But it also, you can see, it sets it up for corroboration as well, because that dispatcher may still be alive and exist and remember what he did that night. Um, so, you have that element as well. But
Have you
that
spoken with the dispatcher at all?
I have not.
Okay. Do you know if Suffolk County is following up with regards to speaking with the dispatcher?
I trust Rodney Harrison, to make sure that the right things are done. That's a right thing, and I trust him that it'll get done.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I commend him because I think the job he's doing is just amazing. So,
Yeah,
yes,
great guy.
yes, yes. So, yeah, thank you. I have another question here. I don't know if you can reveal this information or not. Somebody is asking, Roger Still, is the name of the detective known to to yourself and to Police Commissioner Harrison, detective that attended, I guess, the couple that had attended Rex Heuermann's house on or around
Yeah,
February. Yes. Okay. Yeah. But obviously, I'm sure you can't reveal that information, correct?
more than
No.
that, I can't say.
Okay. We'll leave it at that. All right. So, well, I do want to thank you for your time. I really do appreciate it. I appreciate all the work that you're doing. And can you just speak, like, are you working what is your relationship with Rodney Harrison? Like, do you have a good relationship that you're working together in tandem, or, as
We're
people
work.
come forth to you, is
Yeah.
there transparency there?
There's great transparency. Rodney and I, we're very good friends. We've become good friends through this case, and we have, I think, mutual respect, as you could tell. He relies upon my good judgment in producing evidence. I rely upon him as well, and that continues. We've since the time of our press conference, more evidence has come, more affidavits and such. There's more to do. There's more being done, and that hopefully will continue. So he's opened the door to that relationship, and it's working. I mean, I don't. I, I'm happy to give him whatever I have, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not reluctant at all.
Sure. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah. Well, again, I do want to thank you for your time. I appreciate all the information that you provided, and we'll see where this goes with regards to the affidavits and witnesses coming forward, and hopefully
Yeah.
this will open some doors. And
Well, I'm glad you're thinking that. It's that nothing's perfect.
mm-hmm,
There may be setbacks. There may be issues that arise. I don't know. I mean, I'm fully expecting that human nature will cause that to happen, but even so, we're moving in a large way in the right direction.
mm-hmm,
And I will just continue if any people want to come forward and talk to me. I don't reveal anything to Rodney or anybody else without their permission, prior
mm-hmm.
permission. And so I'm here to do that. And Rodney's already pointed people in that direction, and it's working. So here I am. I'm
Yes,
still
yeah.
willing to do the job and work, even at this late hour, like we
Mm-hmm.
are now. Right?
Yes, yes. And I did keep you a long time. I do appreciate it. One of the things, though, as much as I admire Rodney Harrison, I'm concerned because obviously Election Day is coming up. And, there's always that possibility that with the new Suffolk County executive, he may put his own people in place. And with all this work.
Whoever it may be,
Yes,
that could
yes.
be either Republican or Democrat. You're quite
Mm-hmm.
right. And Rodney has his own life to live as well. So
Yes.
I don't know, how long he'll stay there. I don't know. He's never told me.
Yeah.
And but I worry that he'll go, and that I hope if we get somebody else, if he does go, that at least it will be somebody who'll keep that door open. Be
Yes.
ashamed that didn't
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. Well, thank you again for your time, and
All right, my friend.
I appreciate it. And keep up the good work. I know there are a lot of people in your corner, and I know that Shannon's family is, so proud of the work that you're doing on their behalf.
No, thank you. Also,
Yes,
Jessica Taylor.
Jessica Taylor as well. Yes, yes. All right.
So, all right.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Have a great night.
All right. You too.
Thank
Good night.
you.
All right.
So, this is another edition of My True Crime Obsession, and I want to thank everybody for their support and for always keeping the victims as the main focus. It's always about victims' rights. And this is me checking out, and I will check it back in with you guys in our next episode. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you. Bye.